Welcome to Just Write Julie, the writing podcast where craft meets strategy and creativity meets clarity. I'm Julie Navickas, romance author, corporate communications pro, and university instructor. Most writing podcasts stay in one lane. This one brings together three: craft, career, and communication. Each episode features authors, editors, and marketers to help you strengthen the work, position it, and talk about it with confidence. If you're ready to write better and share your work with intention, you're in the right place. Just Write Julie. Let's get to work. Welcome to Just Write Julie, the podcast where writing meets strategy and creativity meets clarity. I'm your host, Julie Navickas, a multi-published, agented romance author, a communications pro, and a university instructor. And I am thrilled to be here on this episode of Just Write Julie with award-winning author Lisa Engel, founder of 90 Degrees Media. Lisa, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to be able to connect with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Happy to do it.
Excellent. Well, Lisa, I am very curious. You come with a wealth of expertise in story. And one thing that I really want to dig into today is your understanding of character in particular. Characters, how they contribute to the story, and what they do. So that's going to be the focus of our conversation today. But I first want to dig in a little bit to 90 Degrees Media. Can you tell us how you got started working with writers and story development?
Well, my journey started when I was in grad school. I had a grant, so I was able to take a couple of extra credits, and I took a fiction writing class.
Ooh.
And because I thought I was writing a novel, and of course that one never saw the light of day. But in the short story writing class, for the second story, somebody asked the instructor, well, what if you don't have an idea for a story? And the instructor said, steal one. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. That would be an interesting exercise.
Certainly.
And actually, these days, people talk about that kind of thing all the time because now I'm reading a book called The Trope Thesaurus.
Ooh.
And so we have, and you're a romance writer, so
Yeah.
you know about tropes and how those work. And so it's like these days you see tropes all over the place. And unless you're, writing and you're working with that, you don't even really, you just glance over them.
Think about it. Exactly. Wow.
So I started writing and I was also the degree that I got was computer-based education. And that was in the 90s. And that was, like helping design instructional tutorials and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was good with the computer. So, I mean, I have been hearing about ebooks for like 25 years.
Sure. And
some people just realized that there was a thing called ebooks just like a few years ago.
It's true.
So, being good with technology, and I would run into people who needed websites and they had no idea how to put up a website. Well, I happen to know how to do that, and I knew how to write a press release. So I would help authors do that, as well as learn how to improve their stories.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that answer so much, because I think when people think of authors, right, you think of the person who writes the story. But in today's world, it's so much more than that. And there are so many different hats you have to wear, like you point out, because you're not just writing the story. You're building a brand, you're creating a website, you're doing the PR, you're doing the marketing and the promotion. Like it's endless. And so having someone like you with that expertise and that skill set, you have to have it to be successful.
Yes.
Well, Lisa, let's dive into characters. So my first question for you today is, oftentimes people will say, I fell in love with a book. And when I hear that phrase, to me, that means they fell in love with the characters in the story. The characters are often what makes a book good. So, my question for you is what separates a memorable character from one that feels a bit flat on the page?
Well, I tell you, it takes a lot of work. You know,
Yeah.
there are some books or movies that you watch where they are all plot driven. It's all about what's happening. It's not necessarily, and even like the crime dramas,
Hmm.
it's a you get okay, a problem where the cop needs to figure out the solution, and that's plot based. But now they've started integrating, and that's the way like Law and Order that first started out that way, where it was
Huh.
all about how the episode worked, and you didn't really go into very much about the characters themselves.
Hmm.
And then it's like that show's been going on for 25 seasons, and with some of their incarnations, and you've gotten to know the characters. So getting to know the characters, that's what I always find is more interesting, and it takes a lot of work because it's like once in a writing workshop, somebody said, "Oh, well, I know my character, I know my husband really well," and it's like, well, what does he think about when he's shaving? I'm like, oh.
Oh, never
So
would have
you,
thought.
yeah. So you have to know what is your character thinking about when they're shaving. You have to
Yes.
know everything. It's not going to go on the page,
No.
but you have to know every possible thing about your characters.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so valid too, because you're right. Otherwise, they feel flat because all their actions are entirely plot driven. And there's no emotion oftentimes, and there's no connection, and you don't feel that pull to that character. There's a way to do
Exactly.
it. Absolutely. Well, I know that, storytelling has evolved significantly in the 21st century. So I'm curious to know, you are an expert on character development. How have you seen this evolved in kind of the modern publishing world that we live in?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a big subject because it's like, you think about this country, we're only 250 years old,
Hmm.
and our uh, our Declaration of Independence and was written parchment and pen. And just 250 years ago, the printing press had been invented, but it wasn't as widely accessible and used as it was today. You still had people who could barely read and write.
Yeah.
And film is only about 125 years or 100 and just a little over 100 years old. So, and people have only just in the last 100 years gotten accessibility
Mhm.
to written word in a plethora of ways. And back then, it's like when you had stage productions, and I love live theater,
Yeah,
but
same.
still, if you're in the first row, and even the actors are still they're there, they're far away, and they're having to project a lot. And even in Shakespeare's time, when they had long plays, people's attention would wander, and you might have a 2 hour play, but you'd have to cover a lot of material. They'd have characters who were narrators, and they would tell a lot. And even Dickens, his that's one of the changes was that with the printing press and printing and daily newspapers, and you'd get authors like Dickens that was serialized in newspapers, and they were more for the people. They
Yeah.
had to write more for the people, and it would be longer than things are today because they would be paid by the word.
Hmm.
And then you have writers in the last 100 years with like Hemingway and Fitzgerald, they realized with this advent of film that they were going to have to, and more books being published with the technology and printing and stuff getting more and more. If they were going to keep their readers, they were going to have to write for the people.
Ooh.
And then uh, today, so the language changed, and language is always changing. I mean, it's like even you have editors who are like, well, that newscaster said I instead of me. Well, language is changing.
Language changes. Yeah.
So you've you've got that, and then even with movies, when
Hmm.
they started 100 years ago, you watched the movies, there was no sound,
Right.
and you it was very grainy and black and white, and even when they started the talkies, it was still, the screen was, it was fun to go to the movies, but it was in black and white, and the cinematography wasn't that great.
No.
And now, I mean, even in the watching TV shows from the 1980s,
Hmm.
notice there's these broad establishing shots,
Yes.
which you don't see anymore. And,
No.
and the 50s, in the movies in the 1950s, you'd go and they'd start out with all the credits and all these big, long establishing shots. And you can't get away with that anymore.
No, it doesn't work.
Yeah, you've got 4K. Most movies are at least in 4K, and forget
Yes.
the, 8K and 16K. But you got a close-up shot of an actor in 4K. You can really see the details. And if you've got a good actor like say DiCaprio or somebody like
Sure.
that the character's emotions will show on the face and you could really see them. I mean, you're sitting there, if you're in your living room with big screen TV, very clear, and you can see that. And so novelists have had to adapt. So they can't write these long, flowing,
Nope.
omniscient scenes
Mm-mm.
because of television. People have been now programmed to that 30-minute, 40-minute time frame. You
Yeah.
got to keep their attention. I
Hmm.
grew up watching television, so I am not going to be patient for several pages well before you can get into a scene.
Exactly, exactly. And as I'm listening to you talk, Lisa, I mean, you have a great I like how you describe the evolution throughout history. And you're right on. That's exactly what I would think of it too. And it kind of makes me giggle because I'm a huge fan of Tolkien. I love the Lord of the Rings, like fabulous storytelling, right? And people are like, "Oh, have you read the books?" I'm like, "Of course I have," right? But we always laugh. It's like he could spend pages describing a tree. And I'm sure it's a beautiful tree, right, in his mind, but you could never get away with that. Like that piece of literature could never be published in today's modern publishing industry. So it's what it made me think of when you were talking me through it.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge changes, and the market is so saturated these days with there's just so many books coming in. It is overwhelming.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Lisa, I'm wondering, many of the listeners for this show, they are new writers. So they are just beginning their journey, just starting to understand storytelling and character development. Do you have any practical tips that you would offer for building a deep, believable character?
Like I said, the most important thing is you have to know your characters
Hmm.
better than you know yourself.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I see, people put like I belong to several Facebook groups, and sometimes somebody will post an excerpt from something they're writing, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I'm having trouble with show versus tell," and they post this thing that's very step by step detailed uh, um, the thing about driving
Yep.
from one place to another.
Hmm. Play by play. Yep.
Yes,
Hmm.
and it those kind of things don't really work anymore. We want to know what the character wants. We want to know how they're feeling. We don't want to know that they rolled down the window. We want to know, are they afraid of what's going to happen when they get to their destination?
Yep.
We want to know what the conflict is.
Absolutely. And that's so well put. And I know I'm just listening to you. I'm thinking back to, the very first manuscript that I tried to write. And that's exactly what I did is a play by play of every single physical action a character would make. And it's like, that's not the interesting part. That's not what the reader wants to know. They want to know what they're thinking about. What are they feeling, right? What do they want? What is their goal? And it's so
Yeah.
easy to fall into
And
that trap.
I actually have kind of a controversial
Ooh,
uh, um, viewpoint on something, and that is the word smile.
ooh,
And I have, when I run across the word smile,
uh-huh.
sometimes I'm like, oh, because it is not only is it telling, it's a
Hmm.
stage direction. It's like you
Yeah.
can have the director just point, smile. But like I said, uh, it's telling, it's a stage direction.
Yeah.
It it's boring because it doesn't really tell you what the character is feeling. I mean, you might uh, turn on a show and the actor smiles. Well, these days you can't just smile. You have to show the emotion where they're smiling, but you can tell it's a forced smile, or
Yes.
you can tell it's a genuine smile. We want to know that. We don't want to know the character smiled. We
Right.
want to have a clue of whether it's genuine or forced.
Absolutely. And there's different types of smiles, right? I mean, it's not descriptive enough. And I guess you could leave the reader to kind of infer based on the situation. But you're right. If you're challenging yourself as an author, describe it, right? What do they feel when they smile? If it's like a mindset shift or something.
Put the emotion in there.
Exactly. That's a fabulous tip. And I think that is something that you do learn, right? As you get better and as you spend more time in it, you can discover what's the best way to approach this because you're right, that default of, Julie smiled, right? Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Like there's more you can do with that. That's the easy way out.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, I know you have uh a lot of professional experience with editing, developmental editing specifically. So I would imagine you're very familiar with dialogue. And when I think of characters, right, dialogue comes with it, right? You have to know your character so well and know how they speak or what words they would use or how they, interact with another character. What is one way that you can identify that dialogue is working well when you're reading a manuscript?
That it's not conversation.
Mm.
The character, if you're going to have dialogue, the characters have to have an agenda.
Oh.
And sometimes people say, "Yeah, but we have to know how they got there or whatever." Well, people, you gotta trust your readers. And if you have somebody sitting at a table, somehow they got there. You want to know why they're there, what's the conflict that's bringing them there, whether it's just that um, they just found out they have diabetes and they don't know what to order.
Hmm.
You know, some type of conflict.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, but it has to be something and maybe they've never tried sugarless whatever, but you've got the waitress there. You don't need to describe a waitress because people have
No.
seen a waitress or a
Right.
waiter. They
Yes.
know what they look like. They know what diners look like. You
Yeah.
don't have to describe everything because people these days have had media in their house for so many years that they've seen the Eiffel Tower, maybe not in person, but they know what it
Know what
is.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, they know what the Statue of Liberty is, even if they've never been to New York, you
Hmm.
know. So you got to trust your reader, and you can do that more and more these days because
Yeah.
people have seen, even the poorest people have seen um, some type of television or books or comic books or magazines.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I like that you point out too, right? Like dialogue has to have a purpose, right? It's not just filler. It needs to be there for a reason. Otherwise, it's one of those scenes that are ultimately just going to get cut because it's not furthering the story.
Because that's the one of the most important things about a character
Hmm.
is they have to have their agenda. I mean, it doesn't have to be um, anything. The two characters have to have different agendas. I mean, it could be that they don't want to go to a Chinese restaurant. They want to go to a Mexican restaurant, but their person that they're going to eat with really wants to go to the other restaurant because they have a crush on the server. Who knows? And they
Right?
don't want to tell anybody that.
No, but you need that layer of drama, don't you?
Yes. I don't know
That's
why I'm talking about
happened.
food. It must
No,
be
you
lunchtime.
must be hungry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's an excellent observation. And I think dialogue, it's tricky to write at first. So, what are some mistakes that you tend to see with maybe new writers who are just getting started with understanding dialogue?
Well, one thing is the not having agenda or trying to put in too much of the, oh, hi, how are you?
Oh,
And that
yep.
kind of thing, where we don't need those these days. I mean,
No,
um, you can you can let your people know your character is polite without having all of those things.
that's true.
And and a couple of things. One is subtext. It's what are they not saying?
Ooh, yes.
Because you could have a scene. One of my favorite writing instructors, Robert McKee,
Hmm.
he gives an assignment. It's like write a scene where your two characters are trying to change a tire, but the scene is not about changing a tire.
That's a great exercise.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I
you get
love that.
subtext in there where,
Yeah.
you know, um, you know, hand me the damn wrench. Well, or, oh, please don't talk like that. Or,
Right.
and then there's the other thing. So subtext is one thing. You got to
Hmm.
get the subtext in there, and that can be really hard. It can take many, many little tweaks to get
Yep.
that right.
Hmm. That's very
And then there's the voice, having each character a different voice. Because some things, I've read some things, especially new writers in workshops, where their characters sound alike,
sure.
or they all sound like the author.
Yeah.
And especially like if you're writing memoir. But they each have to have a voice, and as people know, if they start listening to around them, they know that different people have different kinds of voices. Even people who are very similar, they
Hmm.
have different catchphrases or whatever. It's like my friend that pretty much only listens to music from the 70s. She's got a little bit different dialogue than me, who has who I read a lot of historical fiction, so some of
Uh-huh.
my phrases might be a little old fashioned, but people have their own voice. They
Exactly.
have
A
their own little
distinct
way of
voice.
talking.
Yeah, certainly. And I think you're right. That's something that, like, oftentimes I'll read through a story and I'm like, I had a hard time differentiating between who was speaking because they sounded so similar or had the same mannerisms. Like, it's the author's job to make it so distinguishable that you understand what that discussion is about. It's hard to do, it takes time. Well, Lisa, what about point of view? I know this plays into how you're able to write your character and have them connect with readers. So, what advice or what's your take on point of view? How do you do it best?
Well, thing is you can have most people use either first or third point of view.
Mhm.
And I haven't read very few things that are second point of view with
Yeah, I
the
mean,
you.
yeah.
But usually it's the I or the she, he.
Yes.
Um, and uh, some people, though, have tried omniscient, and I'll tell you, usually I can't read
Yeah.
if a book is omniscient, which is a lot of times even like right now, because I'm going to be interviewing somebody, I'm reading one of their books that takes place in the um like 20 some odd 20 30 years ago, and it's a crime procedural kind of thing, and so it's all omniscient, and I'm like, but I'm missing the characters.
Exactly. That's hard. Yeah.
And there is the one book I can think of that really did omniscient, like, okay, where
Well,
where it really didn't bother me was Lessons in Chemistry.
oh, I haven't read that one.
Yeah, it really is good. It is, if you look hard, and some people might not even notice, but if you look hard, it is written in omniscient point of view.
Interesting.
but which I usually cannot really handle these days.
Yeah.
Usually the first or third person, and but these days we've got a thing in fiction writing
Hmm.
called deep point of view. And that goes into where I'm talking about uh if these days we're used to watching the movies where they can zoom in on the character and see from the look on their faces and their actions these details. And that's seeping into the way people write these days, where you have to have a deep point of view where you're not you're showing more through the writing. And um and then the other thing happens in the copy editing,
Hmm.
where you take out all those sensory verbs like
Oh,
look, watched, smelled,
yep.
and a lot of those things, the sensory verbs.
Yep.
People are those are getting cut out. And even when I in 2021 I was going to publish my book, my first novel,
Yeah.
and I had an editor go through it, and I couldn't believe all the sensory verbs he found. I'm like, oh my
Easy
goodness,
to
I didn't
fall
find
into.
all of those.
Yes, exactly. And, it's one of those when I teach workshops and things like that too, I'm like, those are indicators that you're automatically showing, right? Or you're telling your reader instead of showing. So it's like when you hear those little phrases, it's like, get those out of there. That's improving your writing right from the get go. Yeah.
Yes.
So dialogue, we've gone over point of view. How about pacing? Because I feel like pacing can kind of make or break a character as well.
Yeah, and that is actually one of my weak points.
Mm.
And it's it, it's really hard. But it's amazing when it works. It's amazing. I was talking to a writer the other day, and she primarily teaches the three act structure.
Sure.
So if you can stick to that, and you can, move around the furniture where, they have these things. I love Blake Snyder's To Save the Cat,
Yes.
and they have a version
Hmm.
for novel writers as well,
Yep.
as his was written for screenwriters. But the screenwriting and the novel writing have kind of blended in these days.
True.
So, but he talks about having the beats for, you've got the Dark Night of the Soul and the instructional path and this kind of things. And yes, those can be switched around, and
Sure.
you can move some of those things around, but you do need to have an event in the midpoint where your character changes. That's the main thing, is your character always has to be changing in some way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's easy to lose sight of that when you're so ingrained in the details and focused on the story and the characters. And, if you step back, which is hard to do, you're really just looking for that same story arc that plays into every story that we tell. And it's easy to lose that for sure. So pacing is hugely important and hard to do.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, we have shared a lovely conversation today about character development. Thank you so much. I mean, you are so wise that I know that we could spend probably another hour talking through this, but I do want to dedicate some time. Where can listeners connect with you? Where can find more information about 90 Degrees Media?
Well, my website is 90degreesmedia.com. And or on the social media networks, I go by Angle on Writing. So YouTube, Facebook, um, uh, TikTok, I post once in a while, and Instagram. It's all. I actually even have been posting a little bit lately to Pinterest.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How's
that's
that
kind
been
of
going?
doing a little resurgence.
It really has. And you're not the first person to say that to me, but I'm curious. We'll have to chat more about that.
Yeah. But angleonwriting.com, if you search for that on a YouTube or Facebook, you'll find me.
Fantastic. Excellent. And I believe you have a download about the top 10 tips for writing your story. Anything you'd care to share about that?
Well, it's got some really good little tidbits. A lot of them I talked about today, but If you want notes, then subscribe to that, and that does put you on my email list. But I only send one email a week, and it's usually talking about the latest thing I've posted on YouTube.
Fantastic. Well, that's impressive. One email a week. That's a lot. And I commend you for that because it's time consuming work for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Lisa, for any listeners who are maybe tuning in for, 2 minutes today, what's the most important takeaway, or what's the one thing that you would share with someone if they weren't able to listen to the whole episode?
Well, the one tip I always tell writers is, I once at a writing workshop, I asked somebody, well, what are you reading these days? Are you reading in your genre? And it's like, oh, no, I don't read. I don't read at all. I don't, I can read, but I just don't. But if you're writing, you really should be reading or listening to things in your genre,
Yeah,
and bestsellers, trying to at least read the bestsellers, some of them,
exactly. Exactly.
you know, but you got to read. If you want to write, you have to see what else is out there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic advice. And it's so easy to think that, oh, well, because I'm writing, I'm developing my craft. And you are, but there's a very easy way to also use books, right? To fuel your storytelling and get different perspectives and different ways of saying things. Like it builds your vocabulary and your understanding of storytelling, and everybody does it differently. So yeah,
Yes.
huge value.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And you can see how the language is changing.
Yes, exactly. Another key point there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today on the Just Right Julie show, where writing meets strategy and creativity meets clarity. I hope that today's conversation gave anyone listening something new to try on the page, in your career, or just how to talk about your work. You can follow and subscribe in the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And if this episode helped you, please leave a review or share it with a writer friend who could use these resources too. For more tools, templates, and behind the scenes lessons, visit authorjulienavickas.com and connect with me on social media. Until next time, just write and don't be afraid to be strategic about it.